He vanished in the middle of the road, and no one saw him leave. His phone was found, but not him. The road to nowhere hides more than one secret. He called his grandmother that morning. It was May 19, 2016. Logan Schindlaman sounded calm, but his words didn't make sense. He said he had finally figured out who he was. Then he said he was heading to meet someone, and hung up. It was the last time anyone heard his voice. Later that afternoon, drivers on Interstate 5 near Tumwater, Washington, noticed something strange. A black 1996 Chrysler Sebring was parked awkwardly along the median. The hazard lights were off. The engine was still running. When troopers arrived, the car was empty. Inside were Logan's wallet, his driver's license, his phone, and a small backpack. His clothes were neatly folded on the back seat. It looked less like a crime scene, and more like someone had simply stepped out of their life. Logan was just 19. A quiet kid, mixed race, raised mostly by his grandmother, Virginia. He'd lost his mother's attention early. She moved out of state for work. His father had never really been in the picture. He was shy, intelligent, introverted. A student who never caused trouble. But in the months before his disappearance, people said Logan had started to change. He became withdrawn. Distracted. He told friends he was struggling with identity. And that he sometimes felt like he was watching himself from the outside. In his last week, he skipped classes, slept little, and spent long hours driving. He was seen near Olympia, then back at his grandmother's, then gone again. He told Virginia he was meeting someone important. When she asked who, he didn't answer. The day after he vanished, police traced his phone. It pinged for the last time near mile marker 92, just 2 miles south of where his car was found. Search teams combed the nearby woods for 3 days. Nothing. No footprints. No signs of struggle. No trace of Logan. Then came the witnesses. A truck driver reported seeing a young man standing behind a black car on the highway that morning. Another driver said she saw the same man running across the lanes. And moments later, a second man chasing him into the trees. The second man, she said, looked older. And wore dark clothing. By the time police followed up, the trail had gone cold. The second man was never identified. Weeks passed. Then months. And as time went on, theories began to split the story in two. The first theory was simple, and devastating. Logan, overwhelmed and lost, took his own life somewhere in the forest. But if that were true, why was there no body? No scent trail for the dogs. No clues, no note, no sign of what had driven him there. The second theory, the one that spread fast online, suggested something darker. That Logan had been involved in something he couldn't escape. A group, or a person, who followed him that morning. That the second man seen running after him wasn't a hallucination. But the reason he vanished. On Reddit's r/unresolved mysteries, users still debate those few seconds on the highway. Was Logan running from someone, or to someone? Why leave his phone behind, his money, his clothes? Why tell his grandmother he'd finally figured out who he was, only to disappear hours later? Some posters pointed out the location itself. That stretch of Interstate 5 has a reputation. Thick forests, hidden gullies, a history of strange accidents. Locals call it the road that swallows. Cars break down, people walk away, and sometimes, they never come back. In the years since, no remains have ever been found. No confirmed sightings. But one witness came forward much later. A man who said he was driving the opposite way that morning. He remembered seeing something that still haunted him. A shirtless young man standing at the edge of the median. His eyes unfocused, as if in a trance. when the witness looked in his rearview mirror a second later. The man was gone. Logan's grandmother still keeps his room the way he left it. Books on the desk. A jacket on the chair. The scent of laundry detergent still faint on the pillow. She says she sometimes wakes at night, thinking she hears a car in the driveway. Hoping it's him coming home. Investigators reopened the case twice. They searched the nearby river, the drainage systems, and the woods. Nothing new was found. But the file still sits open, officially unsolved. And yet, there's something about Logan's final message that doesn't leave you. That line, "I finally figured out who I am." What did he mean? Was it a confession? A realization? Or a farewell? Some Reddit users suggested a psychological break. That he might have been suffering from depersonalization or early schizophrenia. Others believe he stumbled into something he shouldn't have. An online contact, a dangerous meeting, a wrong place at the wrong time. There are even those who say Logan was trying to start over. Erase his past, vanish by choice. But if that's true, why leave everything behind? The story of Logan Schindlaman isn't just a mystery of disappearance. It's a mirror. Showing how fragile identity can be. How quickly a quiet life can dissolve into silence. And how one phone call can echo for years. As of today, Logan remains missing. No trace. No closure. Just a car, a road, and a question that still hangs in the fog of Washington state. Maybe he found what he was looking for. Maybe he was trying to run from it. Or maybe the road itself took him. Because some vanishings don't end with a discovery. They linger, like an unfinished thought. Somewhere between truth and the unknown. Waiting to be found. It's been years since Logan Schindlaman vanished on that gray morning in Tumwater, Washington. But the story refuses to stay quiet. Every few months, something surfaces, a new detail, a supposed sighting, a theory that promises clarity and delivers only more questions. The first thing you notice when you revisit this case is how ordinary the last day seemed. He wasn't running away from the police. He didn't pack a bag or empty his bank account. He just left. And that's what makes it so unsettling. Because people don't just disappear. Not without leaving a trace. Unless something, or someone, makes sure of it. Investigators went back to the beginning. The phone call. That strange sentence, "I finally figured out who I am." Virginia, his grandmother, said his voice sounded light, like a weight had been lifted. He wasn't manic. He wasn't panicked. He sounded calm. But there was something in the tone. A quiet finality. As if he had already made a decision. That call was placed from near Interstate 5. The same stretch of road where his car was later found. And when the police mapped his cell pings, it looked like he had driven up and down that same short route several times before stopping. Almost like he was waiting. Or circling something. Around 6:45 a.m., a farmer driving to work reported seeing a black Chrysler parked along the median. He didn't think much of it. Until later, when the same car was still there, hazard lights off, no driver in sight. By 8 a.m., the police had tagged it as abandoned. By noon, it was national news. Inside the car, everything was tidy. No signs of a struggle. No fingerprints that didn't belong to Logan. But one small thing stood out. His driver's seat was pushed all the way back, too far for someone of his height. As if someone taller had been there last. Then came the eyewitness accounts. A woman commuting to work said she saw a man. Shirtless, disoriented, running across the lanes of the highway near Logan's car. Seconds later, she claimed, a second figure followed. Older, darker clothing, moving fast. She couldn't see his face. Another driver, heading northbound, reported something even stranger. A flash of movement near the median, and what looked like two men struggling by the guardrail. But when troopers arrived minutes later, there was nothing. No tracks, no broken brush, no one hiding in the woods. Just silence and fog. When the family heard about the second man, they hoped it meant Logan was still alive. That maybe he'd been taken, but could still come home. But days turned to weeks, and no ransom, no messages, no signs. The forest near Tumwater isn't kind to searchers. It's dense, uneven, full of hidden ravines. Over 70 volunteers combed through a 5-mile radius. Helicopters scanned the area with infrared cameras. Cadaver dogs picked up brief traces near the highway. Then lost the scent completely, as if he had vanished into thin air. That phrase comes up often in this case. Vanished into thin air. Because every clue dissolves as soon as you look closer. When the case went cold, the internet stepped in. Reddit, Facebook, local forums. Everyone had a theory. Some said Logan had a psychotic break. That his message to his grandmother was the result of a mental collapse. And that he wandered off, confused, into the woods. Others said no. He was lucid, deliberate, and afraid of something. One post that gained traction on r/truecrime claimed Logan might have discovered something. Something about his family, or his identity, that put him in danger. They pointed to his mixed heritage, his struggles with racism growing up in a small town. They wondered if his realization that morning had to do with his father. A man he barely knew, who lived across the state and had ties to an old network of acquaintances no one could track down later. But there's another layer. Because in the days before he vanished, Logan had told a close friend something cryptic. That he'd been seeing himself from outside his body. And that sometimes, when he drove at night, he felt like someone else was in the car with him. Someone he couldn't see. It's easy to dismiss that as stress, or delusion. But the way he described it, calmly, rationally, makes you wonder. Was it paranoia? Or was he actually being followed? Some Redditors dug deep into highway reports that week. A few mentioned a white pickup that was seen near Logan's car multiple times. Others mentioned a black SUV that appeared in dashcam footage from another driver. Neither vehicle was ever identified. And then there's the timing. Logan's car was found on a Thursday. But a few witnesses said they'd seen the same car the day before. In nearly the same spot, engine running, no one inside. The more you study this case, the more it feels like a loop. A repeating pattern with missing pieces. The call. The car. The man on the highway. And silence. When you drive that stretch of Interstate 5 now, it feels ordinary. But locals say there's something off about it. A pressure in the air, like static. Truckers call it the hum zone. Where radio stations glitch out and phones lose signal for no reason. It's easy to dismiss that as coincidence. Until you remember. Logan's phone cut out in that same spot. Permanently. In 2018, 2 hikers found a set of bones about 5 miles from the site. For a moment, everyone thought it was him. DNA testing said otherwise. Another dead end. In 2020, a local journalist uncovered a police memo that had never been released publicly. It mentioned an unidentified man who had approached officers the day after the disappearance, claiming to have seen Logan alive, walking barefoot down a dirt road west of Tenino, looking dazed but unharmed. When police went to follow up, the man who'd reported it had vanished too. No name. No record. Like a ghost story attached to a real one. And maybe that's what this has become. A modern ghost story. Not of spirits, but of absences. Because in the digital age, no one should just disappear. Phones ping. Cards swipe. Cameras see everything. And yet, here we are. A teenager, a car, a highway, and nothing else. Virginia still keeps her phone by her bed. She says she sometimes gets calls late at night. Unknown number, no voice, just faint static. Maybe it's coincidence. Maybe not. In the end, the case of Logan Schindlaman is more than a missing person story. It's a reflection of how fragile certainty can be. How identity, something we take for granted, can fracture quietly, without warning. One day you wake up, drive a familiar road, and realize you no longer recognize yourself. Logan once told his grandmother he felt like he was half awake, half dreaming. Maybe he still is. Some people say he's alive, living under a new name, somewhere far away. Others say he was taken, his story buried in a file no one can open. But most, even those closest to him, feel something different. That he's still there. On that stretch of highway. Caught between reality and whatever comes next. Because the truth about Logan isn't just missing. It's waiting. And sometimes, the road that swallows people doesn't take them away. It keeps them. In that quiet space where sound fades. Where identity dissolves. And where some echoes never stop calling back. When I first read about Logan Schindlaman, I thought it was just another disappearance. One of the thousands that slip quietly into unsolved databases every year. But the deeper I went, the harder it became to walk away. There's something about this story. Something that lingers. Not because of what we know, but because of what we don't. And the longer you sit with it, the more the silence begins to sound like a voice. Every investigation eventually runs into a wall. A point where evidence stops and imagination begins. But this case, it never even had a wall. Just fog. A stretch of highway where things appear and disappear like mirages. And a message. I finally figured out who I am. Words that sound like closure, but feel like a door opening into nothing. I tried to map his last movements. The car, the phone, the call. Everything led back to the same point. Mile marker 92. That's where the pattern ends. Or maybe that's where it starts. There's a theory I can't shake. It's not about cults or conspiracies. It's about perception, about how our minds can split reality into pieces. When we try too hard to find meaning. Maybe Logan didn't discover a secret. Maybe he became one. Friends said he'd been having dreams that blurred with waking life. He said he could hear two versions of his own thoughts. One calm, one distant. And maybe, in that confusion, he drove toward the one place that matched the silence in his head. That road. That fog. That moment between identity and absence. But there's another angle, one that makes the air colder when you think about it. Some people believe Logan met someone that day. Someone who wasn't supposed to exist in his story. Someone he trusted enough to stop his car for. The seat pushed back. The unlocked doors. The missing time. They all whisper the same thing. He wasn't alone. Police never found evidence of another person. But that doesn't mean they weren't there. We live in an era where it's easy to vanish. Turn off a GPS, destroy a SIM, walk away. It takes just one shadow to erase another. A few locals still swear they saw two men near the highway that morning. One running, one following. It's a small town. People talk. Some even claim to hear things on that stretch of Interstate 5 at night. A low hum. A voice beneath the static of passing cars. Maybe it's the wind through the guardrails. Maybe it's something else. Virginia, his grandmother, doesn't believe he's gone. She says she dreams of him often. Always standing near a road. Always looking back. Like he's waiting for her to see something. She's stopped asking for answers. Now she just wants the silence to make sense. Every year she places flowers by the median where his car was found. She says it's not a grave. It's a marker. A place where time stopped for her family. And maybe for Logan, too. I drove that highway once. Not for answers, just to feel the space. The forest presses close on both sides. The air smells like wet pine and asphalt. Even at noon, there's a haze that doesn't move. You can see your reflection in the road when it rains. Distorted. As if the world itself is looking back. I remember pulling over where his car had been. And for a few seconds, it felt like standing inside a paused moment. Caught between memory and the present. People always ask why we keep telling stories like this. Why we chase ghosts of real people who may never return. Maybe it's because mysteries like Logan's remind us that reality isn't fixed. That it can bend, shatter, or quietly dissolve into the fog. Without warning. In a way, his disappearance became a mirror. Showing us how fragile identity really is. How a person can be both everywhere and nowhere at once. A photo on a missing poster. A name whispered on Reddit. A file marked open. And a heartbeat that never found its echo. There's a post on r/unresolved mysteries that still circulates every few months. It's simple. A user who says they drove that same highway. And saw a young man walking along the median at dusk. Same build. Same curly hair. Same calm, vacant stare. When they slowed down to look, he turned toward them. And smiled. They blinked. And he was gone. No proof. No video. Just another echo in the endless scroll of the internet. But it's the kind of story that stays with you. Because even if it's not true, it could be. When I finish these investigations, I usually find a moment of closure. A line that feels like the end of the story. But this one doesn't have one. Maybe that's the point. Because some stories aren't meant to end. They just loop. Quietly. Like a tape replaying a single sentence you can't quite hear. I finally figured out who I am. If those were Logan's last words, maybe they weren't about discovery. Maybe they were about release. About letting go of the version of himself the world saw. And walking into the one only he could understand. Somewhere out there. In the fog and static of Washington. A car once idled by the side of the road. Its engine cooled. Its headlights dimmed. And its driver vanished. Not into darkness. But into a silence deeper than sound. If you listen closely, the highway still hums. Not just with the noise of passing cars, but with the memory of someone who might still be walking it. Because the truth about Logan Schindlaman isn't buried or forgotten. It's still out there. Alive in every unanswered question. Every mile of empty road. And every whisper that refuses to fade. Somewhere between the light and the fog, he found who he was. And maybe, in that realization, he became what he was always meant to be. A mystery that never ends. A voice that never stops calling back. From the road to nowhere.